Buonasera a tutti. Questa sera
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for being here. We're going to present several analyses which we have carried out in partnership with Confartigianato, Imprese, Vicenza. These are projects that have the purpose of developing the commercial activities of the Veneto manufacturing companies. Specifically, we have focused on the trends in the jewelry industry. The analysis that we have carried out, compared to the classical type of analysis generally carried out in the Italian trade, focuses, in our case, on a global level. So we have tried to identify the exchange in the different countries, so not only Italian export toward third countries, with an eye to the goldsmithing and jewelry industry. We have focused on the customs data, making use of the HS codes, and we have used Comtrade. Comtrade is a database that is also used at university level that allows you to understand the trade value between the different countries. But apart from the method, let's now have a look at the results. In 2021, the jewelry industry ranked 23rd amongst the most traded good categories internationally, with export for $96 billion. Together with some data that perhaps you've heard in the last few years, the 9.6 billion overall of the Italian export, provide us with an idea of the share of the Italian manufacturing to the global exchange. There has been a significant slowdown in 2020 related to the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas 2021 and 2022 have been characterized by an almost exponential growth in export. This applies to all countries in the world. Data also show variations. And variations are important to have a clear interpretation. You can see for 2020 many red values, and in 2022 the only drop was observed in Hong Kong. So in the world, the only exchange hub that still is on the negative side is the Hong Kong market. All the others are on the positive side. Another interesting data pertains raw materials, and we will see this later on in greater detail when we talk about Vicenza exports. In the global analysis, we can see that import show more ups and downs compared to export, and the impact of the pandemic is very clear. Hong Kong is the #1 importer of gold jewelry. 50% of their import come from China. In 2022, in the Arab Emirates, we have a significant drop in the import of gold jewelry with a -30% compared to the previous year. So we can see a favorable trend in this industry that was able to react promptly and better compared to many other industries, such as, for instance, those that suffer most from the pandemic and the Russian-Ukrainian war. And the reduction of trade in the jewelry sector in 2020 is only temporary, and the drop observed during the COVID-19 pandemic did not have a permanent effect on this industry. Pre-COVID levels have been restored almost immediately, with a minor impact that was totally reabsorbed and does not affect the health of this industry. So the United States have grown significantly. Export to Hong Kong has gone down significantly. Markets tend to become more regional, and the exchange, the United States, is the most relevant one. Using the ISTAT data, so before we were talking about jewelry exchange data, now we're talking about revenues data in companies working in the jewelry industry. In 2022, we had more than 7,100 companies with a headcount of 30,600, being number one in Europe. The Italian jewelry industry has grown progressively thanks to its good positioning in the foreign markets, exporting approximately 69% of the overall turnover. The most important markets for Italy are the United States, the United Arab Emirates, and Switzerland. Later on, we will see how the situation is in Vicenza. The graph shows the progressive decrease of export to Hong Kong. Hong Kong used to be a very important hub for export, for Italian export towards Asia. But here we have the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, but already before the pandemic, some geopolitical issues were already affecting the situation, specifically the special trade zone with Beijing. So there's been a significant slowdown in 2020, but the recovery has been driven by the United States, that have been the most significant driver for Italian export. What about the luxury market? So not just jewelry, but luxury in general. What about digitization? What about innovation? Well, we were able to see that in the luxury market, there is a trend of growth and a growing use of online channels. This can be found also in the jewelry industry, and this is actually a necessity. The COVID-19 pandemic has triggered off online purchases, not because the customers wanted to make use of the digital channel, so there has not been a complete switch towards digitization, but rather because it was difficult to go to a point of sale during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have also carried out qualitative studies showing that since a jewel is a luxury item with a tangible component that has an intrinsic value that cannot be blotted out with the picture on the internet, very often the online channel is not the preferred one. it is certainly viewed as a channel that is not the best to transfer the values of the product.
So there are some data which we can interpret as a trend despite the COVID pandemic. And basically, we see that in general, there is a growth also for the jewelry sector within the framework of the world growth related to the acquisition targets of luxury goods. In particular, there is an increase in brand products. There is an increase in the interest for luxury goods, in particular in Eastern countries, and there is a sort of democratization of luxury goods given by a higher spending capacity and the interest of consumers for a product that shows and testifies to luxury and which is a sort of a status symbol. Now, we carried out so-called opportunity and threat analysis, and we assessed the overall values. So the size of luxury markets moved from $37 billion to $90 billion. So, and this despite the COVID pandemic. That means that these past few years have been fantastic, we could say, in terms of the interest for this market. And the global luxury market shows a growth rate which is about 8.5% from 22 to 2030. Asia has mastered the market with a share equal to 65.3%, while now it is the US which is driving the market. And first we see branded products, and the main players are Buccellati, Gucci, Cartier, Mikimoto, and that demonstrates that as the growth rates are increasing in the long term, and as there is a particular interest for the Asian market, well, there is an increase in interest for branded products, and brandization, which will certainly be very successful for the next few years. So there is an increase in customers' interest for branded products, and at the same time, there is an increase in terms of human well-being. In terms of action plans, which are sort of guidelines, which are at the basis of these analyses, well, in terms of opportunities, on the one hand, we have a problem and an opportunity at the same time. That is the low digital attitude of consumers and of the sector is seen as an opportunity for the development of the sector, despite saying that it is a luxury product. It has sales channels which have been very well developed over time, and it is a significant opportunity to promote the sector. In terms of the international score, it is low and medium low. And this is something strange to say at an international fair. But please consider that the jewelry market is not made only by big companies and big brands. Now, inclination to innovation, low to mid-low, again. If you look at the most successful companies and if you ask them about production plans, you will see that there is a strong interest for last generation artisanship techniques, as we call them. That is, various innovative techniques which are often combined with the traditional elements related to handmade craftsmanship. Well, not all companies can combine effectively these two elements. So this opportunity is something important for companies which have not yet used and adopted these methods. In terms of consumers, well, we have to highlight the role of globalization. This is particularly interesting for a sector where we just said that we have a small level of internationalization, above all for certain countries, while in this case we have a considerable level of internationalization. So potential customers are increasingly diverse. While in the past it was easier to identify customers, now it has become more difficult to identify the categories of customers who are interested in luxury jewels. And so hence the need for a greater customization of products, which should be more in line with the trends, with the fashion and specificities of each category of consumers. Today I heard that the new trends today are the blue color, something that I don't really agree with because I don't see that type of evolution, and then fluid jewels. Well, I'm an engineer, so when we speak about figures, I'm very good at figures, but when we speak about trends and specific reactions by consumers, well, I understand that, and I understand that there is a greater heterogeneity in terms of taste, and that we need to offer products which meet these diverse requirements. Now, a small note about digitalization. It is possible to collect more data and to have a greater customization and understand what consumers want. And the artisans can be very visible by creating identities where within each specific product, well, every company can create its own marketing process. Giving for granted, though, that still today, these companies live in a market and work in a market where fairs and exhibitions are still the most important instrument to go to the market. So what I would like to highlight is that there are opportunities, there are consumers trends which are changing, there are sales channels which are still not so much used in terms of the opportunities that they offer. But at the same time, we need to be realistic and say that although there are many opportunities for creating clusters, to date, the most important channel is represented by fairs and exhibitions, with some well-known cases like Vicenza. Now, what is the image of made in Italy products? Well, perhaps I'm going into too great details, but I would like to focus on territory, lifestyle, history, manufacturing, aesthetics, and brand. So there is the need to communicate the Italian brand and specifically the Vicenza brand. How can I do that? Well, brandization comes from a common thread where the jewel can disseminate a story or a history. So looking at history, craftsmanship, ability, it is possible to have this product which is better than other products. So the territories, and in particular we're speaking about the Vicenza territory, shows its innovative capacity and shows that there is a product which comes from tradition, a product which, apart from being technologically very advanced, represents beauty and can meet the specific requirements of consumers in terms of their preferences. The US market. Well, we have seen the perception of luxury goods in this market. What does made in Italy means in the US? It means lifestyle, beauty, heritage, craftsmanship, and know-how. And the keys to the market are inclusion, sustainability, online channels, and customer care. Some barriers: cultural and social differences. Typical American consumers are very sophisticated consumers. I see that there is a mistake here in the slide anyway. We mean American consumers here. And what is important is post-sale service. And we know that it is not very well managed in the manufacturing sector. In the jewelry sector, this service is passed on to sellers, and this is not very far-sighted, let's say. And then there is another element which has to do with the difficulty in accessing the American market without a brand. And here we're speaking about luxury goods. So the greater the added value and the greater should be the recognition of that brand. Opportunities. These are the key factors of the sector. So design, quality, the ability to adapt to the taste of the market. So technical ability used not or used as a means and not as an end. And then another opportunity is given by exhibitions and fairs, and then the implementation of online services and customer care services. So let's skip this slide. And let's have a look at this slide about the branded market.
New generations and new markets have brought to the jewelry market to become a branded market. We're just quoting what has emerged in our questionnaire. So small jewelers having no brand trust the wholesale channel, and today this channel is having some difficulties. The supply has increased because of the multi-fashion brands emerging close to the traditional one. The challenge is to be able to tell about craftsmanship through efficient storytelling. And the factors that have driven the growth are investment in digital distribution, marketing, and a strong brand story. These are just what we found in the questionnaires. So the branded market share has increased to the detriment of the unbranded market share. There's no doubt about that. This is a certainty. So we have to try and understand each individual's specificities to understand whether the branded market is accessible or not. The unbranded market is not going to disappear. Let's not forget that. There is a trend, especially in the jewelry, with a greater added value to move towards the branded market. So these are the well-known Italian jewelry clusters. There are also the digital platforms in Vicenza and Valleggio. In Vicenza, this has not been experimented with yet, and we believe that tradition is fundamental. It is fundamental to be able to transfer values, the manufacturing, the production values, and the intrinsic values of the product. But putting together companies only because they come from the same area is meaningless, because one may have ladies' jewelry, the other one men's jewelry, chains versus gemstones. We believe it is much better to share opportunities rather than to share promotion of one's jewels. It is very important to support companies to open up to new markets, persevering towards local production excellence and embody the Made in Italy values. In other words, production with a greater added value, a production that, combining tradition and innovation, can provide original solutions to meet consumers' needs. We have then focused on the Vicenza area. Yes, let's now analyze the Vicenza jewelry cluster. After this general description of the global scenario, we have investigated the data provided by our office, Confartigianato Imprese Vicenza. We have made a quantitative analysis based on the number of companies still active at the end of 2022. So in Vicenza today, we have 669 companies with a headcount of 4,719 people. 169 of these 669 companies, 372, more than 50%, are artisanal companies. where artisanal activities are significant. This makes up 55.6% of the whole cluster, with 1,624 employees, about 1/3 of the total headcount. Vicenza, like all the other Italian jewelry clusters, has a strong vocation for export. The great part of our turnover is exported, and we have analyzed the last 12 months, from April 2022 to March 2023. These are the most recent available data. And this has shown that the Vicenza jewelry companies have exported for approximately 2.152 million euro, with the growth by 15.8%. Sorry, it was 2,152 million euro. A positive growth compared to the national situation, even though it is slightly less, since at national level we have a plus 17.9%. So Vicenza ranks second amongst the most important jewelry clusters as far as the export results are concerned. More recent data pertain to the first quarter 2023, which has been characterized by growth by 6.9% compared to the first quarter of the previous year, but the positive trend is slowing down. Considering the historical moment we're going through, characterized by high inflation rate and by the war in Ukraine, for sure, compared to other manufacturing industries in Italy and in other countries as well, the jewelry industry is actually holding pretty well, even though we can see that growth is slowing down. But still, we have a plus 6.9%. Export. The Vicenza jewelry cluster has a strong export vocation. We have seen two significant shocks. The first one followed the financial crisis in 2008-2009 with a minus 35%. And the second shock is the shock in 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we had a minus 20%, but the jewelry industry and the Vicenza area as well in 2021 recovered the suffered loss of 2020. And in 2022, performance was even higher than in the pre-COVID period than 2019, with a plus 53% compared to 2019. So 2021 and 2022 can be viewed as record years. Our analysis has then focused on the main markets for the export from Vicenza. These data reflect the national situation. The United States still rank first, being the number one outlet market for jewelry from Vicenza, with a plus 23% compared to 2021, and export for 497 million. This is followed by the United Arab Emirates and South Africa. So these are the three main outlet markets for Vicenza jewellery. Hong Kong used to be one of the reference markets for our cluster, but has gone through a significant crisis in 2020, and the situation is still ongoing without significant recovery. Other countries, like the United States, have shown a significant growth in 2022. The same is true for Mexico, with a double-digit growth. Switzerland, another important market, also as a logistical hub, because we have many companies in our cluster that also work for third parties for companies located in Switzerland. Therefore, the data pertaining to Switzerland must be viewed both as an outlet market, but also as an interface market, a hub market. And the same is true for other markets. Ireland, for instance, has become a very important logistic hub in the last few years. And then markets have grown, such as Romania, and markets have dropped, like the United Kingdom. This also reflects Brexit. Malaysia, France and Australia. We have also decided to further delve in the data, trying to define also a price trend. 2022 and 2021 were characterized by inflation, with increasing prices of raw materials, of energy, which of course had a significant impact on the growth of this industry and on the final price of the finished product, affecting both production and export. However, our analysis has clarified that even if you remove the export data from the price increase data, it is possible to see that volumes are still growing with the plus 11.2%. So it is true that the data were affected also by the price increase with this amazing export record. But if you take the inflation rate away from the data, export still proves to be record-breaking. Also, if you compare this with the pre-COVID period. The last analysis in the field of export pertains to the foreign exchange issue, and data of 2022 show the devaluation of the euro on different markets of export, with a negative trend in 11 out of 13 markets, including the most important countries. So in this period of time, companies had a greater interest in exporting due to the fact that the euro currency was weaker compared to other companies. This is true for the Mexican peso, the American dollar, the currency of the United Arab Emirates. And the recent data, the first quarter 2023, still show this trend to continue, although in a minor way. So a 0.05 minus 0.05 of the euro compared to the first quarter of 2022. And compared to the 11 markets considered in 2022, we only have 7 negative variations out of 13 countries, from 66% to 53% of the whole gold jewelry export.
So that was my last slide. So let's hear if there are comments or questions. Please, in the microphone.
Rispondo io velocissimamente.
I will answer the question. So in terms of sustainability, I have to be honest, it is considered a good opportunity for market appreciation, above all in the long term. Gold is not a material which is wasted or thrown away, and so there is a great interest for sustainability. In terms of the use of more effective techniques for the processing and the manufacturing, well, that is something intrinsic in the sector. So the answers coming from surveys and questionnaires show that there is a higher interest for sustainability as compared to other sectors. Yeah, let's say that most companies in this hub are artisan companies, that is, small companies, and they adopt specific certifications, and I'm referring to the RJC certification. They're still limited in number, although we see that there is a growing interest also by small companies towards these certifications. And I'm convinced that the mid to long term attention towards this topic will increase further. In terms of consumers, I have to say that we haven't seen the same interest.
È un discorso di campione.
Well, it depends on the samples. In our survey, in our analysis, we saw that many manufacturing countries and companies, well, they have a very low internationalization rate. That means that much of the production in the Vicenza area is carried out by companies which do not go directly to the market. There are many third partners. And so my message is that there is a great opportunity because the jewelry sector is very much related to the art sector. And we have often companies which are small, they just have 50 staff, for example, and we have to be aware that most of the most data tell us that there are companies which sort of get together while the number of staff decrease. And in terms of exporting companies, well, we counted about 300 of them. So there is a possible increase of companies which are offering their products. And this is significant for a sector which is so much interested in internationalization. So that is to say that our analysis has been more focused on manufacturing and Well, the sector as a whole is growing a lot. And just drawing some easier conclusions, the sector has grown because the US market has absorbed the production in a significant way, and this in the past 2 years. I would like to note that the overall growth rate of the Vicenza area is lower than the national rate in Italy, and the speed of degrowth is lower, meaning that the sector is still increasing. Earlier on, we grew less than the others, while now we are growing at a faster speed. So that means that the Vicenza products, which are on average more valuable than other hubs in Italy, well, that enables us to have a less elastic trend, and that is to say, a more stable trend. That means that at a global market, there is a market, which is the US, which is driving, which is the engine of this market, while we are still lacking some items. And then there is a market like the Arab Emirates, which has not disappeared, but which is not as strong as the US market. Well, if you saw the overall values of the US, well, that is going beyond the values of 2020. So at the same time, we need to understand what is the issue of competition. And of course, it is important to have good products with a good storytelling, telling consumers the added value thanks to innovative systems in terms of production, and then traditional issues which are very much appreciated by customers. And at the same time, it is important to know how to tell, how to narrate this story. And according to our conclusions, you can do so by creating a brand. The idea of having a territorial or regional brand is something that can be talked about, and you have to say that you come from Vicenza.
Siamo stati abbastanza veloci allora. Se non ci sono
So apparently there are no other questions. We hope that you appreciated our talk. Thank you.